Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a great group with us, and we're genuinely excited about the conversation we're about to have. I'm Jen, VP of Product, and today we're going to dig into something that keeps a lot of IT and IAM teams up at night. What happens when your identity platform, as in your tenant, goes down, gets misconfigured, or becomes the target of an attack? All right, let's get into it. We have a packed agenda, so let's move to our first slide. Here's how we've structured the next 30 minutes. We'll start by talking about the rise of shadow AI and why that changes the identity threat landscape. From there, we'll cover why IAM is so critical, what's causing incidents to spike, and how to think about backup recovery, and what true resilience actually looks like in practice. We'll also walk through what Acsense has built to address these gaps. All right, let's start with the big picture. You've probably heard it before, identity is the new perimeter. But I'd push that framing a little further. Identity isn't just a perimeter. It's the control plane for everything. It determines who can access what, when, and under what conditions. In today's environment, where users, applications, APIs, and AI agents are all requesting access simultaneously, the stakes around identity have never been higher. If your IAM platform fails for any reason, your entire workforce can be locked out instantly. This slide puts into perspective what's actually at stake. We call IAM Tier 0 infrastructure, but it's important to understand that today, that doesn't just mean workforce identity. It includes customer identity as well, your CIAM layer that powers login, authentication, and digital experiences for your users. So whether it's employees accessing internal systems or customers logging into your applications, it all runs through the same identity control plane. And that's why the impact is so broad. The threats here are multidimensional: misconfigurations, outages, or ransomware, malicious changes, compromised credentials. But what's critical is that these are not just security events. A misconfigured policy doesn't just create risk, it can lock out customers, break authentication flows, and immediately impact revenue and user experience. So now you're not just dealing with a security issue, you're dealing with a business outage. That's why the conversation has shifted. It's no longer just how do we protect IAM, it's how do we ensure identity systems, workforce, and customer remain operational and recoverable? That's what we mean by IAM resilience. Here's a sobering number. 90% of firms suffered an identity-related breach in the last year. That's from the Identity Defined Security Alliance, and it tracks closely with what we see in practice. The causes are spread across misconfigurations from human error, ransomware attacks that manipulate identity, insider threats, and increasingly non-human identities and API-driven changes that happen at machine speed. And here's the compounding factor. 90% of organizations report skills gaps within their security teams. So you have more threats, more complexity, and fewer people to manage it. That's a difficult equation. Does that 90% number surprise you at all, given what you're seeing on the ground? We talk a lot about sophisticated attackers, but the reality is that most IAM incidents start with something much more mundane: a misconfiguration, a policy change that had unintended downstream effects, a bulk operation that went wrong. And automation doesn't solve this, it amplifies it. When a misconfigured rule is part of an automated workflow, the blast radius grows instantly. Information Week research found that responding to a single incident, even a relatively minor one, can take up to 8 hours. That's 8 hours of your team's time, on top of whatever downtime users are already experiencing. The question isn't whether human error will happen. It will. The question is, how quickly can you detect it? How far back can you look? And how fast can you recover? This slide captures something that's often underappreciated. The blast radius of an IAM incident is enormous. When you have multiple privileged admins, interconnected systems, APIs, AI agents, and scripts all touching your IAM environment, and something goes wrong, the damage doesn't stay contained. It cascades: user data, infrastructure configurations, applications, financial records, compliance posture, all of it is downstream from your identity layer. And the more you've automated and integrated, the larger that blast radius becomes. What looks like a small change at the IAM level can trigger a tenant takeover, application failures, or compliance violations within minutes. This is what we call the butterfly effect of IAM. It starts with a single user identity. That identity has entitlements. Those entitlements are tied to multiple roles. Those roles interact with groups, apps, policies, and infrastructure. One can propagate through that entire dependency chain. And what makes this particularly tricky is that most organizations have no visibility into those dependencies. They know what they can see in the admin console, but they don't see the 90% of object relationships happening underneath. We'll come back to that 90% number in a moment. But first, let's talk about what happens when bad actors understand this better than your team does. This is a framing shift that I think is really important. Ransomware is no longer just a data encryption problem, it's an identity problem. Modern ransomware operators manipulate identity before they ever encrypt a single file. They're establishing persistence at the IAM level so that even if you restore from backup, they still have a foothold. Mandiant's M-Trends 2025 report reinforces this. Ransomware operators now routinely target not just production systems, but also backups. The MGM case is instructive here. $100 million in recovery costs, 2 weeks of downtime, and it started with identity compromise. That's not a cautionary tale anymore. It's a template that attackers are actively replicating. Let's put a dollar figure on this because this is what makes the business case real. Unplanned IT downtime now averages $12,900 per minute. 90% of midsize and large firms report hourly downtime costs above $300,000. And for the largest organizations, it can reach over $500,000 per hour. Now, apply that specifically to identity. If your IAM platform goes down, your workforce can't access systems, operations slow or stop. But more critically, if your customer identity layer goes down, your users can't log in, transactions fail, and digital experiences break instantly. That's not just downtime, that's direct revenue impact in real time. Every minute becomes lost revenue, failed transactions, and customer frustration, which often has a longer tail in churn and brand damage. And this is why identity is no longer just an IT concern. It's a business continuity problem. This also ties directly into cyber insurance and regulatory expectations. More and more carriers and auditors are asking, can you prove you can recover critical systems within defined timeframes? Being able to say we can recover our identity environment, workforce, and customer in minutes is no longer a nice to have. It's a financial control, a compliance requirement, and increasingly a condition for doing business. All right, let's do a quick gut check. I want you to think about your own environment as we go through these 3 questions. First, how much identity change can you afford to lose? That's your recovery point objective, your RPO. If your Okta, Ping, or Entra ID environment rolled back to yesterday's state right now, what would be missing? Provisioning changes, group assignments, policy updates? Do you know? Second, how fast must access be restored? That's your recovery time objective, your RTO. If authentication went down at 9 a.m. on a Monday, how long could your business realistically absorb that outage before the pressure becomes critical? And third, which applications are truly mission critical? Your crown jewels. Have you actually prioritized recovery order? Most organizations haven't formally answered these questions. And that's actually fine. That's what we're here to help you think through. But you do need answers before an incident occurs. This is one of the most important slides in this deck, and it's also one of the most frequently misunderstood concepts in cloud security generally. Okta, Ping, or Entra, like AWS, like any major cloud provider, operates under a shared responsibility model. Your identity provider secures the service, the infrastructure, the physical security, the platform availability. They are extraordinarily good at that. But the continuity of your tenant, your data, your configurations, your ability to recover, that's your responsibility. Your identity provider will tell you this directly if you ask. This isn't a criticism of Okta, Ping, or Entra. It's the nature of the model, but it means that if your tenant is misconfigured, compromised, or corrupted, you cannot rely on Okta to restore it for you. That gap is real, and it's what Acsense was built to close. And this isn't unique to Okta. Ping and Microsoft Entra ID and other providers follow the same shared responsibility model. They guarantee platform availability, not your tenant's configuration integrity or recoverability. The gap is the same regardless of which identity provider you're running. 6 reasons why IAM needs independent backup, and each one is independently sufficient to make the case. Let me walk through them quickly. 1, IAM platforms do not back up your customer identity state. 2, errors, automation, and insider actions cause most IAM incidents, not platform outages. 3, There's no native historical identity visibility or investigation capability. 4. Break-glass access restores application access, not identity configuration. 5 a.m. failures cascade across the entire business. And 6. Recovery without proof, a documented, auditable recovery chain, is not defensible to auditors or cyber insurers. Any one of those is a serious gap. Together, they represent a significant unaddressed risk in most organizations' security posture. Let's be specific about what's missing natively. Okta provides 90 days of log retention. There is no object dependency visibility. You can't see how a user ties to a group, ties to an application. There is no rollback capability. There is no ability to clone your environment to a sandbox for testing. There is no native configuration management. And critically, when SSO breaks, it doesn't realign itself. Your applications don't auto-reconnect. Each integration has to be manually re-verified. These aren't edge cases. These are the gaps your team encounters during every significant change or incident. The question is whether you have a structured approach to managing them. Most teams think about protecting users, groups, policies, and applications. And yes, all of those matter. But what they miss, and this is where things get really interesting, are the relationships between those objects. In an average Okta or Entra ID environment, roughly 90% of IAM objects are dependencies, the relationship between a user and their groups, the relationship between groups and applications, the relationship between users and apps directly. These aren't visible in a standard admin console view. They're not captured by log retention. But if you lose them, if those relationships are corrupted or erased, you lose access control. Full stop. Recovering the objects without recovering the relationships is like rebuilding a house, but leaving out all the load-bearing walls. So we've established that identity is complex, it's a shared responsibility, and most organizations have no recovery plan for it. But let's make this real, because these aren't hypothetical scenarios. These are 6 jobs that every IAM team faces. And they're the reason we built Acsense. Accidental misconfiguration. This is the most common trigger. Someone modifies an authentication policy, removes a group assignment, changes an MFA rule, and a critical workflow breaks. Maybe it's a bad Terraform apply. Maybe it's a manual change in the admin console. There's no undo button. You're manually recreating the configuration from memory or hoping your state file is clean. With Acsense, you roll back to any prior state in minutes. Granular, dependency-aware, no guesswork. Configuration management. This is where a lot of organizations think Terraform has them covered. And Terraform is great for managing desired state. Version control, GitOps, repeatable deployments, but it can't recover to a specific point in time from last Tuesday at 3:47 p.m. It doesn't cover all object types. It has zero visibility into manual changes made directly in the UI. And if someone runs Terraform destroy on the wrong workspace, your state file doesn't save you. Acsense complements Terraform. We capture complete point-in-time snapshots every 10 minutes, including objects Terraform doesn't manage. We give you sandbox seeding and tenant cloning so you can replicate production into dev or staging, use the JSON editor to adjust region-specific settings, and push across tenants without maintaining separate code bases. Ransomware and insider threats. When an attacker compromises your identity layer, whether it's ransomware or compromised admin making unauthorized changes over 48 hours, the blast radius is everything. You need a complete timeline of every change by that actor across every object type. And you need the ability to recover your entire tenant to a known good state, not object by object, not rebuilding from code. Full orchestrated recovery to the exact state before the incident. Compliance and audit readiness. Your auditors don't care about your Git history. They want evidence of actual tenant state, continuous, timestamped, mapped to the frameworks they audit against. Acsense maps your live IAM configurations against these frameworks, detects drift in as little as 10 minutes, and generates audit-ready evidence. That includes changes made through Terraform and changes made outside of it. Disaster recovery. Not rebuilding from code, actual disaster recovery. If your primary tenant experiences a catastrophic failure, Terraform can eventually rebuild your infrastructure, but you lose all operational data, it takes days, and your applications are down the entire time. Acsense provides continuous tenant replication with a 10-minute RPO, hot standby for instant failover, and last-mile automation that updates SSO metadata across all of your downstream applications. True business continuity. And the one that's accelerating all of this, non-human identities and agentic AI, service accounts, API tokens, zero-auth grants, machine-to-machine credentials already outnumber human identities in most enterprises by 10 to 1 or more. Now add agentic AI into the mix, systems making identity changes through API calls with no human in the loop, creating service accounts, modifying permissions, provisioning access. When something goes wrong, whether it's a rogue automation or an AI agent that made a bad policy change at 3 a.m., the job is the same. You need a full audit trail of every API-driven change, point-in-time recovery, and the ability to roll back what a specific service account or agent did without impacting everything else. Every one of these jobs is solved by one platform, and that's what we're about to walk through. We use the word resilience intentionally. It's a higher standard than backup or recovery alone. Resilience means your identity infrastructure can absorb disruption and keep operating, or recover so fast the disruption is barely perceptible. So, what do we actually mean when we say IAM resilience? It starts with a simple reframe. Identity is infrastructure, and infrastructure has to be recoverable. Think about every other critical system in your stack: compute, storage, networking, databases. Every one of them has resilience built in: backup, recovery, failover, validation. It's table stakes. But identity, the system that governs access to everything else, never got that treatment. If your Okta tenant breaks, your recovery plan is a spreadsheet and a prayer. That gap is what IAM resilience closes. And we define it through 4 principles. Recovery over visibility. Most identity tools tell you what happened. That's useful. But when something breaks at 2 a.m., you don't need a dashboard. You need a recovery path. Resilience means you can actually undo the damage, not just see it. Validation over assumptions. Don't assume your backup works. Don't assume your recovery process is sound. Test it continuously. Automated DR drills, measured RTO and RPO, proven recovery, not theoretical recovery. Proof over promises. Your auditors, your board, your regulators, they don't want to hear that you're resilient. They want evidence. Continuous, time-stamped, mapped to the frameworks they audit against. Resilience has to be demonstrable. And automation over improvisation. When an incident hits, the response shouldn't depend on who's on call and whether they remember the runbook. It should be systematic, orchestrated, and repeatable. These 4 principles are what separate organizations that are resilient from organizations that just think they are. And on the next slide, I'll show you how we've structured this into a maturity framework. 5 layers that build on each other so you can measure where you are and what to do next. At Acsense, we envision a future where enterprise IAM is secure and fully resilient, ensuring uninterrupted business operations. That's the North Star. Everything we build is in service of that mission. Let me walk you through what the platform looks like. On slide 16, we defined what IAM resilience means. This is how we've structured it. Acsense is the first enterprise IAM resilience platform, and we think about resilience as a maturity framework with 5 layers. It starts at the base with data protection because you can't recover what you haven't preserved. Identity has to be treated as recoverable infrastructure, and that starts with continuous, immutable capture of your entire IAM state. Layer 2 is posture intelligence, moving from protection into awareness, understanding what's changed, what's drifted, and what's at risk across your identity environment. This is where validation over assumptions begins. Layer 3 is resilience operations, the ability to act. When drift is detected or a misconfiguration occurs, you can remediate with precision. Recovery is proven and tested, not improvised during an incident. Layer 4 is continuous validation, where resilience becomes demonstrable. It's not enough to be resilient, you need to prove it. Your IAM configurations are continuously mapped against the regulatory frameworks your auditors use: SOC 2, NIST, DORA, NEST 2, AMPR with drift detected in as little as 10 minutes. This is proof over promises, evidence-based, continuous, and audit-ready without the manual spreadsheet scramble. And layer 5 coming soon is orchestration, where resilience becomes systematic. Automated response workflows that execute recovery and remediation without waiting for a human to triage. The key insight is that these layers build on each other. You mature upward, and the platform matures with you. Acsense maps across the full IAM resilience lifecycle, and I want to frame this in terms of the business outcomes each phase delivers. We prevent business disruption by continuously validating configuration integrity, catching drift and misconfigurations before they cascade into outages that lock out users or break critical workflows. We reduce compliance exposure by maintaining immutable, evidence-based audit trails. When regulators or cyber insurers ask for proof of your IAM resilience posture, you have data, not a scrambled reconstruction after the fact. We protect revenue and reputation by ensuring your identity infrastructure can recover in minutes, not days. When an incident hits, whether it's a misconfiguration, a tenant compromise, or an IDP outage, your access layer stays operational. This is what we mean by an end-to-end IAM resilience platform. We're not solving one piece of this problem. We sit across the full spectrum, from proactive posture validation to proven recovery to continuous compliance proof. That's what makes this a resilience platform, not just a point solution. One of the things we've heard consistently from customers is that they want a platform they can grow into, not a solution they have to rip and replace as their needs evolve. So we've designed Acsense around 3 distinct maturity stages. The entry point is for IAM administrators who need continuous automated backups, granular restore, configuration history, and point-in-time rollback. That's the foundation. And for many teams, it's transformative on its own. As you expand, IT and operations teams can layer in full disaster recovery capabilities, defined RTO and RPO targets, cross-environment recovery, and business continuity assurance documentation. And as you mature, security teams unlock compliance. That means full audit trail and change history across your entire identity environment, continuous compliance validation mapped to the frameworks your auditors actually use, not point-in-time snapshots for audit season. You need continuous automated evidence that your identity configurations are where they should be. And when something does go wrong, you need security incident investigation tools that let you trace exactly what changed, who changed it, and when across every object type in your tenant. You can also add configuration management as an add-on at any stage, which gives you drift detection, safe change promotion across environments, and sandbox seeding for pre-deployment testing. Let's go a level deeper on the backup and restore capability, since this is where most customers start. The core capability is continuous automated backup. Every configuration change in your Okta or Entra ID tenant is captured and versioned automatically. No manual steps, no scheduled jobs you have to manage. It's always on. From there, you get granular object restore, meaning if one policy, one group, or one user assignment breaks, you can restore just that object, not the entire tenant. Point-in-time recovery lets you roll back to any prior state in minutes, with full visibility into what changed. And the complete change history feature gives you a configuration diff, who changed what, when, and what it looked like before. This is something identity providers' native logging simply doesn't provide. When we talk about disaster recovery, 2 numbers matter most: RTO and RPO. With Acsense, we're talking about RTO in minutes and RPO approaching 0, because your identity state is being captured continuously. What makes our disaster recovery capability differentiated is independence. You don't need your identity provider's involvement to restore. You don't need their support team on a call. And critically, you can restore even during an identity service disruption, because your backup is entirely independent of your identity provider's own infrastructure. You can also restore to a different tenant, which is useful for testing, staging, or emergency failover scenarios. And every recovery operation produces a documented, auditable chain, which is increasingly what cyber insurance carriers require as proof of disaster recovery capability. But here's what really sets us apart: continuous resilience validation. Acsense is the only platform that lets you run automated disaster recovery drills against your identity infrastructure, proving your recovery time before an incident, not during one. You can validate that your RTO and RPO targets are achievable on an ongoing basis and present that evidence to leadership, auditors, and insurers as proof that your identity layer is recoverable. Configuration management addresses a challenge that every IAM admin knows well: the gap between your dev and production environments. The capability here is configuration comparison, a side-by-side diff of any 2 configurations across time, across environments, or across tenants. Drift control gives you real-time alerts when your Okta or Entra ID environment deviates from its approved baseline. And safe promotion lets you move changes from a preview or dev environment to production with full approval workflows and the ability to roll back instantly if something behaves as expected. Sandbox seeding means you can replicate your tenant on demand for realistic pre-deployment testing. No more guessing whether a change that worked in dev will now work in production. This is our identity assurance capability, and this is where resilience becomes demonstrable. Most organizations treat IAM compliance as a periodic exercise. You pull logs, build spreadsheets, scramble before an audit, and hope nothing material changed since the last time you looked. That's not compliance. That's a snapshot masquerading as assurance. Acsense flips that model. Your IAM configurations are continuously monitored and mapped against the regulatory frameworks your auditors actually care about. When something drifts, you will know about it in near real time. When an auditor asks for evidence, you have it not a reconstruction, but a living record. And because we cover both Okta and Entra ID under one compliance baseline, you're not running parallel audit processes for each identity provider. One platform, one evidence trail, one place your auditors and your cyber insurers can go to see the state of your identity posture. This is what we mean by proof over promises. Your compliance posture isn't something you prepare for, it's something you maintain continuously and can demonstrate on demand. We're proud of the external validation we've received from Gartner. Acsense was recognized as a sample vendor in the 2025 Hype Cycle for backup and data protection technologies, and was named a 2022 Gartner Cool Vendor in Identity-First Security. For us, these recognitions affirm that the category we're building, IAM resilience, is real and growing. The analyst community is paying attention to this space, and we're proud to be at the forefront. Our customer base spans industries and organization sizes from fast-growing technology companies to large enterprises and regulated industries. We're protecting IAM environments for some of the most demanding organizations in the world, and we're proud of the trust they've placed in us. If you'd like to speak with a reference customer in your industry, we're happy to arrange that as part of your evaluation process. Accense wasn't built by generalists who stumbled into the identity space. Our founding team has deep, specific expertise that is directly relevant to what we're building. Muli Matola, our co-founder and CEO, brings hands-on experience in enterprise-grade backup, recovery, and disaster recovery from his time at EMC. He also held leadership roles at EMC and Dell Technologies, specializing in data protection and disaster recovery. Daniel Nafchi, our CTO, is a technology leader with over 20 years of experience in enterprise software, security, and IT infrastructure. He has held key leadership roles at Amdocs and Cellcom. And Itzi Kanan, our COO, brings 25 plus years of experience in IT, cloud security, and enterprise infrastructure from EMC. The company was born out of TerraWorks, Israel's top cloud security integrator, in 2021, after the team spent a decade implementing over 100 complex Okta environments and kept encountering the same gap: no native recovery capabilities. So we built Acsense to solve the problem we saw over and over again. Before we wrap up, let me hit a few questions that come up in almost every conversation we have. First one, doesn't Okta already have disaster recovery? So this is an important distinction. Okta and Okta EDR are two different things. EDR is a separate product from Okta that provides infrastructure-level failover. If Okta's cell goes down, EDR routes you to a backup cell. You get read-only access within about 5 minutes, read-write within 24 hours. That's availability protection. It keeps Okta's service running, but it doesn't protect your tenant. If someone accidentally deletes an auth policy, if a bad change propagates across your groups, if a compromised admin wipes your configurations, EDR doesn't help. That's not what it's designed for. Think of it this way. EDR is your landlord's building insurance. Acsense is your renter's insurance for everything inside. Different problems, different solutions. And most of our customers run both. Second question, which identity providers do you support? Today, we support Okta and Microsoft Entra ID. But the platform is built IDP agnostic by design. That's not a bolt-on. It's architectural. Ping Identity, SailPoint, Auth0, and others are on the roadmap. The goal is one resilience platform across your entire identity stack, regardless of how many providers you win. Third, what RTO and RPO can I expect? Continuous backup with snapshots every 10 minutes gives you a 10-minute RPO. For recovery, it depends on scope. Single object restores, like rolling back one policy or one group, that takes minutes. Full-tenant recovery takes around 10 minutes when you're fully optimized, not days. And you don't have to take our word for it. You can run automated DR drills yourself and measure the actual numbers in your own environment. 4, do you store our credentials or secrets? Know when this comes up a lot, especially from security teams, and it's the right question to ask. Acsense connects through a read-only API. We never see, store, or touch passwords, MFA tokens, API keys, or secrets. Your backup data sits in immutable air-gapped storage following 3-to-1 best practices. 5th, how long does deployment take? Most customers are fully onboarded in under a day. It's agentless, read-only API integration. No agents to install, no infrastructure changes, no downtime. Your team doesn't need to clear a sprint for it. 6th, do I need to manage any backup infrastructure? No, and this is worth calling out because not every solution in this space works this way. Some require you to stand up your own servers, provision your own storage, manage patching, handle encryption keys, and basically become a backup administrator on top of everything else you do. Then you need a DR plan for your DR plan. Acsense is fully managed SaaS. Your data sits in immutable air-gapped storage following 3-to-1 best practices. You never touch the infrastructure. You never think about it. And last one, we already have an identity threat detection tool. How is this different? So first, Acsense isn't detection-free. We already monitor admin changes and send alerts to your SIEM and Slack, and we're actively building more detection capabilities into the platform. But the real difference is what happens after detection. Your ITDR tool flags a suspicious configuration change at 2 a.m. Great, now what? You open a ticket, you pull up your backup tool, you figure out what to restore. You hope the backup is recent enough. That's two separate systems stitched together with a human in the middle. Acsense closes that loop. Detect the change, see exactly what was modified, and roll it back. One platform. That's the direction we're building toward. And it's a fundamentally different architecture than bolting a detection tool onto a separate recovery tool. Those are the big 7. If you have a question we didn't cover, reach out to us at acsense.com. We'd love to hear from you. All right, let's bring this together. The headline message is one that we've said throughout today, but I want to make sure it lands clearly. Resilience must be designed. It doesn't happen by accident. It requires intentional architecture, the right tooling, and a documented plan before an incident occurs. Identity is your control plane. Incidents will happen. Misconfigurations from human error, ransomware attacks that manipulate identity, insider threats, and increasingly non-human identities and API-driven changes that happen at machine speed. The organizations that recover well are the ones that prepared, and the cost of unpreparedness in dollars, in downtime, and compliance exposure is now measurable and significant. The shared responsibility model means this is your problem to solve, but you don't have to solve it alone. Thank you so much for your time today. If you want to explore what IAM resilience looks like for your specific environment, head over to acsense.com. You can request a demo, explore the platform, or just reach out to our team with questions. Thanks again, everyone. Stay resilient.